Welcome to the Executive Coaching Podcast, where executive coach Alicia Cowan will discuss leadership topics and coaching solutions to tackle the most difficult problems that keep you from leading your team to success.
Hi there, senior leaders. It's Alicia Cowan. Welcome to episode number 42 of the Executive Coaching Podcast. A quick update about the Cowan House. We are in late June as I'm recording this, but headed into July, and I can hardly believe it. But we'll be headed into the July 4th weekend when this episode airs. And we are so excited because we have a couple fun things going on for my favorite holiday weekend out there. It is going to be my 5th wedding anniversary. So my husband and I have a dinner planned where we're going to celebrate with friends and family. And we've got one of our best friends coming into town from Austin, Texas, and he'll be visiting us for about a week. And we are so excited and really anticipating the July 4th fun, long weekend ahead of us. And so that's what's happening here. So hopefully you are enjoying your summer if you're listening to this when this airs, or whatever season you're in, really. So what we're going to talk about today, though, from a leadership perspective, is the power of an effective one-on-one. And we're going to talk through some tips and tricks that are a little bit more tactical for you if you feel like your one-on-ones aren't as effective, or perhaps maybe they're feeling a little bit of stale and like they're not working. We're going to talk through some optional practical tips that you could take with you if you feel like they're a little stale. And so let's talk through the importance of one-on-ones. You know, as an executive coach, I get a chance to coach a lot of different people in every career stage that they're in. I think as senior leaders, I get to talk to you a lot about what your direct reports are bringing to you and the challenges that you have in leading them. And I also get a chance in a group coaching program. I do a lot of management training and teach people about how to have an effective one-on-one. And I see people in every career stage struggle with the one-on-ones. And I think why it can be challenging is, as leaders, we're trying to balance the goals of the company and the objectives that we need to meet for the overall company. But we also need to help our direct reports with some of their conflicting priorities and their workload, their relationships, and some of the challenges and skill gaps they may be having, while simultaneously, again, thinking about those overarching company objectives. And the one-on-one can be really where this plays out. And as senior leaders yourself, you have a limited amount of time and resources. And a lot of people think they're like, I have back-to-back meetings where I'm barely even having time to eat lunch. And I think the question comes into play, like, is this one-on-one really worth all this effort? And sometimes those repetitive calendar meetings can be easily canceled. And so I always answer that question, right? Is the one-on-one really needed and worth it? And do I have to have it on a regular cadence? And my answer is yes, if you use the time productively. However, if you have to ask the question if it's worth it, then that means there's probably room for improvement. And if it's something, again, of course, there's going to be times where you need to cancel the meeting and other conflicting priorities come up. But if that's the norm and that's regular, then it might be worth taking a look at to see if your one-on-ones are still working for you. Okay. So here's some signs that we'll talk through more in depth that they aren't working. So number one could be that you just dread going. You're either frequently canceling or dreading having the one-on-one. So there's just this lack of overall enthusiasm for even having the meeting. 2, if meetings are constantly going over the allotted time. 3, if you're even struggling to fill the time, either yourself or your direct report. 4, if you're feeling completely exhausted or defeated after the meeting. And 5, if everyone in the meeting is distracted by something else, mostly naming these as second screens and other electronic distractions that we have in front of us. Okay. So let's talk through each of these 5 signs that the one-on-ones can be working. And then we'll talk through some practical tips that could be optional to take a look at if you find yourself in any of these situations. Okay. So number 1, this lack of enthusiasm. So if the issue is you find yourself canceling these meetings on a more frequent basis or just generally dreading these meetings, a potential solution could be again, this could feel stale. Take a look at the agenda. Your role as a senior leader is to give space and time for your direct report to come to you with what's going on for them. And at times, allowing them to do that can be done in a way with a little bit more intention and purpose. And so letting them know, like, you want to take a look at evolving the agenda. So a couple of tips for this could be, 1, I love a collaborative agenda. I love either OneNote or like Google Drive for this, but creating an agenda that has topics that both of you can bring, super helpful. And it helps everybody think a little bit more intentionally about the one-on-one ahead of the one-on-one instead of getting to the meeting and just spitballing on whatever is top of mind. So give it a try. Create an agenda, put it into a shared space, and allow both parties to bring things that are important and relevant and that make the meeting worthwhile. The second way that you can mix up this agenda is that once a month, talk through some more career development focus items. Again, this doesn't have to be this full deep dive into deep reflection and development, but once in a while, just checking in and saying, are we still on track to your overarching career goals? How do you think it's going? What do you need help with? Like, give a little bit of a time for reflection on more of a career development and high level, big picture topic rather than just the day-to-day tactical work. Okay. That might help mix up these stale and dry one-on-ones. Okay. 2, the meeting is going over time and time again. So some of these issues could look like there is way too much detail or potentially completely off-track discussions that are happening, or repetitive topics, meaning we keep bringing up the same issues time and time again over multiple one-on-ones. So some potential solutions and tactics you could take towards this. Same topic that we talked about is reassessing the topics. You might need to take a look at if there are topics that are taking up so much time, and maybe this is more of a need for a working meeting, then you can take some time and say, let's focus on just this one topic and just have a working meeting to work through this together. Or even better, you could potentially pair the person up with someone else as a mentor to work through maybe some of the work in a working meeting with someone else. Alternatively, you could also address any of these side issues separately. And you could really dive into if there are repetitive topics that just don't seem to be getting solved, there might need to be some deeper work done there. And so it might need to be done in a separate meeting outside of this one-on-one, and it might take more than just a meeting, right? You might have to take some time to really dive in deep if there's interpersonal issues or if there's issues between teams and it needs to be addressed in more of a mediation style situation. All things to consider as you might be hearing, again, topics that keep coming up and taking you out of the time that's allotted in these one-on-ones. Okay. Also, you might want to consider some of this stuff you can use, different avenues. So, email or Teams or Slack or whatever it may be. If there's topics that don't seem relevant that need to be discussed in these one-on-ones, maybe start to suggest using some alternative forms of communication. Okay. All right. Sign number 3 that one-on-ones are not going so well is when leaders are struggling to fill the time. So it's interesting. I coached a manager that didn't hold one-on-ones and got introduced to the practice and started having one-on-ones, but really was struggling to fill the time and trying to figure out, like, what do I actually need to talk about or want to talk about? And so this one is a big challenge sometimes for leaders that haven't been doing the practice and need some help with this. And you might be coaching some of your leaders on this practice as well, because if you are, again, as a senior leader, you might have direct reports that struggle with this practice. So this could be an issue of, again, comfort in sharing. So there might need to be some trust built there, or it could just be a lack of engagement in the one-on-one and understanding what to talk about. So again, tactical solutions here is to coach around building trust between these two leaders and creating a more open line of communication. And a way to do this is to help either yourself or the leader with some deeper questions to prompt some more discussion. So asking more questions about their decision-making process and talking through what their ideas and solutions are for some of the issues that they're bringing forward, and showing that in these one-on-ones that there can be really open, honest conversation without a retaliation or without conflict or without, right, some difficulty and fear or of managing up. So when they bring forward some issues or some challenges, to really show that there's going to be support there, and that will help with them opening up, building that trust, and starting to create some better lines of communication. And really, it's just a matter of like showing them and building that level of comfort and habit that they can bring things forward without it being scary. Because sometimes bringing forward things to your boss that may be challenges or problems can be a little bit more intimidating. So think about how you can build trust for those. And again, if you're managing leaders of leaders, teaching them how to have that relationship building and trust building exercise built into their one-on-ones. All right, so let's dive into number 4. This one is all about feeling either emotionally drained or deflated after one-on-one meetings. So the issue here, I've heard before that sometimes direct reports just want to vent and they just want to bring things that they're struggling with. And I encourage you to say, this is okay, this is normal. And I would rather have a direct report vent upwards than outwards to colleagues or to their direct reports. So there can be a time and a place where this is helpful and effective. However, if it is a pattern where there's not resolve, that's something to look into. So at times, again, the issue could be where if you're super empathetic or compassionate and you just feel fatigued by this and emotionally exhausted afterwards, it might be time for a solution of just setting a boundary and manage that venting. So again, I had a leader that was concerned about the amount of venting that someone was bringing to her. And we talked about it and we said, again, in some ways you want them to vent to you because you want to encourage it to happen, again, upwards rather than across the org. And so we just set a time for it. And so a tip here is you can just say, okay, on the agenda, there is a venting time. You've got X amount of minutes that I want you to vent. And then once that time's up, we're going to move towards solutions. And so you as the senior leader can guide the conversation more towards productivity and solutions and let them know when their time is up so that they can effectively move forward. It was funny because it changed this leader's perspective about venting and really realized that none of it was personal and that it wasn't a personality or flaw or trait. And it also helped the direct report realize that once that 5 minutes was up, they realized how much they were venting and how much they might have been taking up with their time of venting. And so it can really help guide someone towards being more thoughtful about solutions and how to move forward and what they can control. So let's go on to number 5, the sign of being distracted by second screens. So you know your one-on-ones are not effective if both of you or one of you lack of focus during the meeting because you're distracted by looking at either another screen or your phone or whatever distraction may be popping up during the meeting. And if a solution here could present itself, it would be a couple of different things here in terms of just vocalizing ahead of time and saying, okay, we're going to start this one-on-one. Let's both put our phones down or disable notifications and really be present, and or encouraging active listening by openly and actively saying, hey, I hear you, and repeating back to the person in different terms, of course, but parroting back and saying, okay, so what I'm hearing is, and letting them know that you've heard them and that you're paying attention and that your attention is with them and with the priorities and focus of this meeting. So again, this is so ever present, especially in this virtual world that we're in, where there's probably no less than 3 screens in front of us at any given time. So it's really obvious to someone when someone is prioritizing answering another email or a Slack message. And so again, sometimes there's a time and a place for this, but again, when this becomes the norm, how do we make sure that we reset the stage for having an effective one-on-one for this, and just letting them know simply that we're going to pause this until we're done with our one-on-one. Okay. All right, friends. So those are the 5 signs of needing some revitalization for your one-on-ones. Hopefully some of these practical tips helped. And so in summary, huge tip is to plan and set a clear agenda ahead of time. I love the thought of having a shared agenda. For these one-on-ones, it's important to show up consistently, to show up regularly and with intention. And again, while there may be one-off situations where it's okay to cancel, overall, these one-on-ones are so important to your direct reports and helping them with whatever challenges and roadblocks they're having, and really helping to prioritize the work and helping you move the goals of the company forward through the work with your team. And so engagement is huge. You want to make sure that you can create an environment where it's safe and open and there's trust built. And lastly, of course, a big part of this is moving work forward. So it's important to track all the action items and the progress week to week. And again, I love that shared agenda as a way to track progress here. All right, so in conclusion here, so one-on-ones are vital to moving work forward in our organization. So if you feel like they're stale, again, at last episode, we talked about this like mid-year reset. I think this kind of goes hand in hand with this. Your one-on-one meetings are really essential. And so if you feel like any of these tips apply to you and you feel like they're getting a little stale, take a moment to reflect and see if there is an opportunity to revitalize these and get back on track and do some things differently than what you have before. And talk through some of these strategies with your direct report. Again, feel free to share this podcast with them and maybe have some shared discussions around how to problem solve them, and really take these one-on-ones to feeling like they're just obligatory and on the calendar to really a strong foundation and opportunity to move work forward and move the development of your direct report forward. All right. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm always open to your feedback and questions to tackle in the next episode. And as always, I am so happy to help with you to work through any of this one-on-one. I support leaders with talking through a strategy of leading their teams and even helping their direct reports have effective one-on-ones. It is part of the work that I do in one-on-one executive coaching, as well as group management training programs. So happy to help. You can reach out to me here at my website. It is EliciaCowanCoaching.com. It's EliciaKeown coaching.com. And thank you so much for listening. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Executive Coaching Podcast with Alicia Cowan. If you're ready to have an executive coach who's ready to help you lead your team to success, then book an introductory call at aliciacowancoaching.com/call.